Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we've got some really extraordinary source material in front of us. We're looking at documents, a roadmap actually, that kind of sits at this amazing intersection. You got decentralized finance, pretty ambitious global infrastructure plans, and then maybe the most striking part, this deep spiritual conviction running through it all.
It is genuinely unique. I mean, you're looking at technical engineering documents, but they're interwoven with theological statements. It's definitely not your standard crypto white paper. It reads more like a declaration of faith that happens to also function as a technical guide.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The focus today is what they call the Divine Mandate Roadmap. This comes from the community that, well, sort of rallied and took over the BNBFrog project after it was initially abandoned. And their mission, I mean, as laid out right here in these documents, it goes way beyond just, making money with crypto. They actually state they want to build the bridges, the infrastructure, the financial plumbing needed to, and this is a direct quote, remake the world as what it ought to be. That's taking utility to a whole other level.
It really is. The scope is massive, world-changing even, and they're very clear. The crypto token itself, BNBFrog, isn't the ultimate goal. It's just the vehicle, the tool. The real power, they say, comes from these three pillars that are supposed to guide everything they build: faith, strength, and patience. So this immediately tells you it's not about quick flips or short-term speculation. It's framed as dedicated, almost devotional, long-term construction. They seem to believe they're implementing specific instructions from, well, a higher power using blockchain technology to do it.
That distinction feels absolutely crucial for anyone trying to understand or, evaluate this project.
Yeah.
If the main driver is described as a divine mandate, you're not just looking at tokenomics or smart contract security in isolation.
Exactly.
You're really assessing the community's conviction, their belief, and how likely they are to stick to this, well, spiritual goal over the long haul. And that completely changes how you might think about timelines or even their resilience to market swings.
Precisely. They're attempting to fuse pretty high-level technical architecture. We're talking complex, DApps, smart contracts, cross-chain bridges with very explicit faith-based direction. They actually define their role, let me find the phrase, here it is, as God's engineering division and economic strategy office within the crypto world.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that framing sets up a governance model that's, well, unlike anything we've really looked at before on the show.
Right. And that leads us straight into the first section we wanted to cover.
Yeah.
Digging into that foundational philosophy and the governance structure they've laid out. The origin story itself seems key here. It adds this layer of conviction right from the start. This community didn't just launch a new token. They stepped up. They chose to be, as the documents say, resolute after the original developers of BNBFrog just walked away, abandoned it completely. That initial act, that kind of determination, seems to underpin the whole mandate narrative.
And that act of taking over, of taking responsibility, it reframes their whole motivation, doesn't it? They state very clearly in the sources that their strength, their drive, it doesn't come from wanting worldly riches or, quick profits.
Yeah, they're quite explicit about that.
Very. Their primary strength, they claim, comes from faith in an almighty God, who they see as the source and sustainer of everything good. The core belief seems to be that financial infrastructure, if it's built and guided by this divine direction, can actually become the engine to transform the world. It's a total paradigm shift from the usual crypto narrative. Wealth isn't for hoarding, it's for this mandated global change.
It definitely is a shift. And you can see how that philosophical foundation translates directly into, well, probably the most unique corporate hierarchy I've ever seen documented in any kind of tech roadmap. They don't just vaguely mention spiritual guidance. They actually structure their leadership using corporate language, but with theological figures.
It's an extraordinary blend, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mixing this kind of secular organizational chart with absolute spiritual authority. The sources are incredibly specific. God is defined literally as the chairman of the board.
Right there in the text, chairman of the board.
Yep. That establishes the ultimate source of authority, the direction, the final say on strategy.
And then following that chain of command, the chief executive officer, the CEO, the one tasked with actually implementing the chairman's vision day to day, is identified as Jesus Christ. He's described as sitting at the head of the conference room table.
Which means, functionally, Every strategic meeting, every development decision, every line of code is theoretically framed around adherence to what they perceive as eternally wise direction.
So where does that leave the actual human community members? The developers, the marketers, the people actually, doing the work?
It puts them in a very specific and deliberately subordinate role. They explicitly state they aren't founders in the typical sense, not masters of their own destiny. They describe themselves as just middle managers and employees. Their job is execution, working under this divine leadership.
That's fascinating because it kind of clashes directly with the usual decentralized ethos, right?
Yeah.
DeFi is often about removing trust in central authorities, trustlessness.
Exactly. But here, trust is absolutely centralized in God and Jesus Christ. The community's primary virtue isn't autonomy. It's diligence, obedience, and professional execution of the received mandate.
It creates this immediate philosophical tension, doesn't it? DeFi usually aims to eliminate single points of failure or control. This roadmap centralizes the command structure completely, relies on absolute trust in that divine authority, but then decentralizes the execution among these middle managers. How does that even work in practice for things like accountability or just making quick decisions?
Well, paradoxically, it might simplify strategic debates. Instead of endless arguments driven by individual incentives or egos, the ultimate yardstick for any decision is supposedly, does it align with the mandate? That's the theory, anyway. And all this grand plan, this eternally wise direction, is going to be implemented using what they themselves call a lowly and insignificant frog token.
Yeah, I found that phrasing really interesting. The humility in describing the asset compared to the sheer scale of the ambition.
Absolutely. And that self-description is tied directly back into the spiritual philosophy. It echoes biblical ideas, what is small and insignificant will be made great in his hands. So the BNB-Frog token isn't just a utility coin in their view. It's the chosen instrument of change, wielded by God's engineering division. It almost forces the community to stay focused on the mission, maybe avoid the kind of hubris you sometimes see with big, flashy ICOs.
Okay, so that sets the philosophical stage. But then the roadmap moves pretty quickly from that high-level belief system into concrete technical steps, starting with phase 1. This seems to be where the spiritual governance idea actually meets the blockchain. Let's talk about the LilyPad DAO, the LPDAO.
Right, the LPDAO. This is presented as the core infrastructure for what they term God-guided governance. Functionally, on the surface, it looks like a standard, decentralized, autonomous organization, a platform where people can submit proposals, vote on them, that kind of thing. But the intent behind it is where it diverges dramatically.
How so?
Well, it's designed specifically to be the mechanism through which that eternally wise direction we talked about gets translated into actual executable smart contract code. It's the bridge between the divine mandate and on-chain actions.
And this is where it gets really complex, I think, especially when you look at who they encourage to participate. It's not just engineers and economists submitting technical proposals. The sources explicitly say they welcome participation from community members who believe they have a gift of prophecy.
Yes, to help guide the path forward.
That's quite something. It directly fuses technical governance with spiritual revelation. How does that even work operationally?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How does a blockchain system, which relies on quantifiable inputs like votes weighted by token holdings, incorporate something as inherently subjective as divine guidance or prophecy? A typical DAO votes on, say, a detailed proposal for a liquidity engine upgrade with clear metrics.
Right.
How do you weigh that against a prophetic vision that might be metaphorical, non-technical, or open to interpretation? It implies a need for an incredibly mature, organized, and probably quite unified community to collectively interpret, vet, and then ratify that kind of input before translating it into a formal proposal.
So the community's discernment process becomes almost as critical as the code itself. The governance model needs this constant layer of interpretation, filtering spiritual input. But underneath that, the basic technical structure is still there, right? Voting power is still linked to token holding.
Yes, absolutely. The mechanics are grounded in familiar DeFi concepts. Voting power in the LPDAO is tied directly to the amount of BNB-Frog someone deposits into the DAO contract.
Okay.
So it does link financial commitment, having skin in the game, by locking up your tokens directly to this spiritual governance process. It creates a system where, ideally, conviction, financial buy-in, and perceived spiritual guidance are all meant to work together to steer the project.
Okay, so once that governance foundation is laid in phase 1, phase 2 immediately pivots to expansion, scaling, and interoperability. They clearly recognize that a mission to remake the world can't be stuck on just one blockchain. This brings us to the Leapfrog Bridge Network, or LFBN.
Exactly. The LFBN's goal is pretty straightforward conceptually, though complex technically.
Yeah.
Transform BNBFrog into a truly cross-chain asset. They need to enable the seamless movement of its value across many different blockchain networks. This is obviously essential if they want the kind of global reach their mandate implies. The token needs to be usable wherever digital infrastructure exists, not just on its home chain.
And the initial list of target chains for these bridges really shows the scope of their ambition. They're not starting small or just testing the waters with minor chains.
No, it's a powerful mix right from the get-go. The sources list Ethereum and Solana, obviously huge players for market cap, DeFi activity, and, in Solana's case, transaction speed. Then you have ZK Sync, a major Ethereum scaling solution.
Okay.
But then they also list Shibarium and Luna Classic.
Interesting choices, chains with very passionate, sometimes controversial, but definitely large and committed communities.
Right. And then also XDC, which is known for being enterprise-focused and aiming for ISO 2022 compliance. We'll probably come back to that later. And finally, Electroneum is on the initial list, too.
That selection feels very strategic. It's like they're trying to cover multiple bases at once, capturing DeFi liquidity on the big chains like Ethereum and Solana, sure,
Right.
but also positioning themselves for potential enterprise use with XDC and maybe tapping into the energy of those other strong community projects like Shibarium and Luna Classic.
I think so. And technically, building reliable bridges across such a diverse landscape, you've got EVM-compatible chains, Solana's different architecture, potentially others, that's a huge undertaking. It requires custom smart contracts, rigorous security audits, robust off-chain infrastructure for each connection.
And critically, even this ambitious expansion plan is still subject to that core governance structure, the LPDAO. While they have these initial targets listed, the roadmap says the LPDAO is the ultimate decision maker. Any future chains they want to bridge to have to go through the proposal and voting process in the DAO.
Which, again, ensures that the community's interpretation of the divinely guided vision directs every expansion step. It acts as a check, theoretically, against purely opportunistic technical decisions. Every new bridge needs to be justified not just by market cap or potential users, but by how it serves the overall mission.
Right. And Phase 2 isn't just about bridges. It also includes crucial pieces for the user experience. The LilyPad wallet, LPW, and the first version of FrogPay, FPay.
Yes, the LPW is positioned as the secure, dedicated gateway for users. It needs to handle the native BNBFrog token on its original chain, but also manage all the bridged versions, the wrapped tokens or representations on Ethereum, Solana, ZK Sync, and so on. The goal is to simplify what can be a very complex cross-chain reality for the average user.
Makes sense. You need one place to see and manage everything.
And integrated within this wallet environment is the first iteration of FrogPay, or FPay. This is their initial move into peer-to-peer payments, letting users transact directly within the ecosystem using BNBFrog. So the LPW is the secure container, and FPay provides the initial transactional utility inside it.
And sticking to the theme, that governance layer is always present. The LPDAO doesn't just approve bridges. It also gets to decide which other cryptocurrencies, if any, the LilyPad wallet will eventually support.
Exactly. It constantly reinforces that the community, guided by their interpretation of the mandate, maintains control over every element of the technical stack, from the bridges down to the wallet features.
Okay, let's shift gears into Phase 3. Because this is where I think the roadmap moves beyond just connecting things and governing them into the really intricate mechanics of trying to create a self-sustaining economic engine. This is where it gets really interesting, digging into the proposed economic models and stability mechanisms.
Yeah, they clearly recognize that for a token intended to have this kind of global mandated role, they need more than just bridges. They need mechanisms to ensure its stability and create real intrinsic demand for it, no matter which chain it happens to be on at any given moment. The first major piece addressing this is the Leapfrog Arbitrage Engine, the LFAE.
Right, the LFAE. Its stated objective sounds crucial: ensuring the price of BNBFrog stays consistent across all the bridge networks and the exchanges where it's traded. In a multi-chain world, price differences between the same asset on different chains is a constant problem, right? Arbitrage opportunities pop up all the time. This engine is designed specifically to counteract that for BNBFrog.
Exactly. When we talk about an arbitrage engine in this context, especially one designed for stability, you have to assume it's a pretty sophisticated piece of automated software. The LFAE is likely envisioned as a complex algorithmic trading system.
How would that work conceptually?
Well, it would need to constantly monitor the real-time price of BNB-Frog in every liquidity pool across all the connected chains, Ethereum dexes, Solana dexes, eventually CEXs too. When it detects a price discrepancy, say, BNB-Frog is slightly cheaper on Solana than on Ethereum, it would automatically execute trades to exploit that difference.
Like buying low on Solana and selling high on Ethereum almost instantly.
Precisely. It might use things like flash loans to borrow the necessary capital for microseconds, execute the buy and sell orders across chains, and repay the loan all in a single transaction block. But the key point here isn't just profit for the engine. The effect of these constant high-speed arbitrage trades is to push the prices back into alignment across all markets. It smooths out the differences, ensuring one BNB Frog on Ethereum is worth the same as one BNB Frog on XDC or Shibarium.
Maintaining that unified value proposition. That makes sense. And that technical complexity probably explains why they mention a phased rollout, starting on decentralized exchanges first.
Yeah, starting on DXs gives them a more controlled environment. They can test the arbitrage logic, refine the algorithms, manage the smart contract risks more directly. Expanding later to support centralized exchanges, CEXs, introduces a whole new set of challenges dealing with API latencies, exchange withdrawal fees, different regulatory environments. So DXs first, then CEXs.
Okay, so the LFAE is the stabilizer, the price anchor across chains. But the real core of Phase 3, the part designed to create long-term demand and utility, seems to be the Future Frog ecosystem, or FFE. This sounds like more than just a single application.
Oh, much more. It's described as a comprehensive economic architecture. The goal is to establish BNB Frog not just as a token that can be used, but as the core, non-negotiable store of value and as a required transactional currency within this entire ecosystem they plan to build.
And the ambition here really comes through when you look at the kind of expertise they say they need to hire. The sources specifically mention recruiting PhD-level mathematicians, economists, and even AI specialists to design and build the FFE.
That's a huge signal. You don't bring in that level of heavy-hitting academic and technical talent to build simple yield farms or another NFT marketplace.
No, definitely not.
It suggests they're aiming to create highly complex, perhaps mathematically modeled, durable economic systems. Systems designed specifically around BNB Frog, capable of potentially weathering macroeconomic shocks within the wider crypto space and functioning reliably across this multi-chain network they're building. They need specialists who can design things like sophisticated token sinks, carefully balanced incentive structures, maybe dynamic risk models, all tailored to work with BNB Frog across all its bridged forms.
And the absolute core of this FFE, the mechanism that's supposed to guarantee that intrinsic demand, seems to be the most assertive economic move in the whole roadmap.
It is. It's essentially designed as a closed-loop economic system to enforce the utility of BNB Frog. The rule, as stated, is simple but absolute. All dApps, all services, all tools built within this Future Frog ecosystem must exclusively accept BNB Frog for any payments, fees, or transactions.
Wow.
Exclusively. Exclusively. So if you want to use any service within their ecosystem, you have to acquire and use BNB Frog. It moves the token from being just one payment option among many to being the essential key required for access.
That's a model you sometimes see with major tech giants,
Right.
right? Like needing to use their proprietary currency or platform to access their services.
Mm.
But applying that kind of mandatory closed system within the generally open source, often interoperable world of DeFi feels, well, highly unusual. It also raises questions, doesn't it? Like, what happens if the mandatory currency itself becomes super volatile? Wouldn't that deter users?
And that is almost certainly why they specify needing those PhD economists and mathematicians. That's their challenge to solve. They would need to engineer the FFE itself and perhaps the underlying tokenomics of BNB Frog to mitigate that very risk. Maybe through algorithmic stabilization pools funded by transaction fees, dynamic fee adjustments, sophisticated staking or bonding mechanisms, maybe even complex collateralization systems.
Things far beyond a simple token.
Exactly. The goal would be to ensure that even if the external market price of BNB Frog fluctuates, the internal economy of the FFE remains stable and predictable enough that users are willing to operate within it and abide by that mandatory utility rule. By forcing this exclusive use, they create a powerful constant demand driver, a token sink, which they likely see as necessary to underpin the long-term financial viability of their world-reforming vision.
Okay, so Phase 3 builds this complex internal digital economy. Then Phase 4 takes that foundation and makes this incredibly ambitious leap, trying to bridge it directly into the physical world and also into the highest levels of global enterprise finance. This really shows the full extent of the mandate they're following. It's not meant to stay confined to just blockchain networks. It has to interact with traditional global markets.
Absolutely. The first step into the physical world detailed in Phase 4 involves creating actual hardware, the Frog Vault, FVLT, and the Frog Point of Sale, FPOS devices.
Hardware. Okay, that's a different ballgame entirely.
It really is. The objective seems clear. If BNB-Frog is going to be used in the real world, people and businesses need secure, tangible ways to manage it and accept it for payments. Their strategy here is, frankly, incredibly sophisticated for what started as a community takeover project. They state they plan to either acquire an existing hardware wallet manufacturer outright or license leading technology to develop their own custom FVLT hardware wallet and FPOS devices.
That's a massive operational jump. We're not just talking about deploying smart contracts anymore. This involves supply chain management, secure chip manufacturing, hardware design, quality control, distribution, getting regulatory certifications. The FVLT needs secure cryptographic elements, tamper resistance. The FPOS devices need to be durable enough for daily commercial use.
It's a huge undertaking, and naturally the roadmap states these physical devices must be fully compatible and integrated with the software wallet, the LilyPad wallet, ensuring a smooth experience whether you're managing funds on your computer or tapping a physical device at a store counter. This move into hardware really underscores their commitment to making the Frog token viable at every level of interaction, from secure individual cold storage right through to retail payments.
But then the absolute peak of their enterprise ambition in Phase 4, the component that really signals their intention to plug into the existing global financial system, is the ISO 2022 Enterprise Leapfrog Engine, or IELF.
This is, technically and strategically, a monumental objective. For listeners who might not be familiar, ISO 2022 is the emerging global standard for financial messaging. Think of it as the common language that banks, payment systems, clearinghouses, and major financial institutions worldwide are adopting to communicate information about high-value payments, securities transactions, trade finance, everything. It's replacing older, fragmented standards like SWIFT MT messages.
So by targeting ISO 2022 compliance, they're not just aiming for crypto adoption among individuals or DeFi users. They're positioning themselves to interact directly with the established, regulated, institutional financial world.
Precisely. Building a financial engine that speaks ISO 2022 fluently means the BNB-Frog network could potentially communicate directly with traditional payment rails, maybe even systems connected to SWIFT or central bank digital currency initiatives in the future. It opens the door to handling institutional-level transaction, volume, and value.
Okay, so what's the IELF actually do?
Its objective is to be an enterprise-grade service. It's described as the backbone that will power the B2B business-to-business and even B2G business-to-government version of their payment system, which they call BF Pay, presumably Business Frog Pay. This engine would need incredibly resilient, secure, and high-throughput infrastructure to meet the demands and compliance requirements of institutional clients.
And the practical application they mentioned is providing plugin services.
Yeah, for online merchants, large corporations, maybe even government agencies. These plugins would allow these entities to seamlessly accept or send B2B or B2G payments using BNB-Frog, leveraging the entire underlying infrastructure, the Leapfrog Bridge network for cross-chain settlement, the arbitrage engine for price stability, all while communicating using the globally recognized ISO 2022 standard.
So this is where all the previous phases really converge. The bridges, LFBN, the stability engine, LFAE, the governance, LPDAO, they all become the foundation that allows potentially huge institutional value to flow using the Frog token, but in a way that's compliant with the international banking communication standards.
Exactly. The scope laid out truly covers the entire financial spectrum, from simple peer-to-peer payments using FPay in Phase 2, right up to complex, regulated, institutional B2B and B2G payment rails via the ELF and BFPay in Phase 4. It's a complete financial plumbing roadmap, all supposedly guided by that single, overarching, divine mandate.
And the sources are careful to emphasize, even at the end, that this detailed roadmap isn't set in stone. They call it a guide based on their faith and obedience, explicitly stating it's not a final destination. The mission, as they see it, is ongoing. They plan to continue to build whatever God wants us to build.
But what gives this whole endeavor, despite its highly unusual spiritual framing, a layer of potential credibility is their stated commitment to professional execution. They stress repeatedly that they intend to adopt industry-leading software solution delivery methodologies, drawing direct comparisons to the rigorous processes used by global consulting and tech giants like Accenture and IBM.
So it's like saying, yes, we believe we have a divine commander giving us orders, but we're going to execute those orders using the absolute best practices and highest standards of secular project management and engineering available.
That's precisely the duality. We are middle managers implementing eternally wise direction, but we will do so with the same systematic, scalable, documented rigor that you'd find at the world's top technology firms. That tension, or perhaps synergy, between prophetic guidance and IBM-level process discipline is, frankly, one of the most astonishing aspects of this entire plan.
So where does that leave us? What does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at the story of an abandoned meme coin project, basically.
Yeah.
Resurrected by a community driven by intense spiritual conviction. And we ended up tracing a roadmap that spans everything from decentralized governance explicitly incorporating prophecy to complex multi-chain arbitrage engines for price stability, PhD-designed economic ecosystems with mandatory token utility, the actual manufacturing of secure physical hardware wallets and payment terminals, and ultimately a plan to integrate directly into global institutional finance using the demanding ISO 2022 standard.
The sheer breadth of the ambition is just breathtaking. When you lay it all out, like the technical scope, the philosophical consistency, however unusual this divine mandate roadmap is quite something. It really does offer this unique window into how profound conviction, when married to meticulous professional planning, can mobilize a community to architect an engineering and financial strategy of this scale. They're not just trying to launch another crypto token. They're aiming to build what they believe is a world-changing financial system, operating under this very unique blend of divine direction and professional execution.
And it's that last part that's key, isn't it? They're not just praying for the IO to appear. The roadmap says they're hiring the PhDs, the engineers, the project managers, and adopting the methodologies of IBM and Accenture to actually build it. That commitment to technical rigor feels like the necessary grounding for the potentially ethereal nature of the spiritual guidance.
It absolutely does. And if we try to connect this back to the bigger picture, perhaps to you listening, it raises a really important question to think about privately. Given that this project explicitly states its reliance on both top-tier technical rigor, adopting these industry-leading development methodologies, and this God-guided governance, including prophetic input for strategic direction, how does that unique dual framework change the way you might typically evaluate the risks, the potential timeline, or even the ultimate upside potential of a crypto roadmap?
It definitely forces you to weigh factors like conviction and perceived divine guidance in a way that typical financial models or technical analyses just can't capture.
Indeed. It's a fascinating, real-world case study unfolding at the intersection of deep faith and decentralized financial technology.
Well, thank you for joining us for this very unique deep dive into the Divine Mandate Roadmap. We will see you next time on The Deep Dive.